Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're here to speak about Lord Jagannath as the Supreme Father. Srila Prabhupada spread this Ratha Yatra festival all over the world. And in this way, he gave a practical demonstration that Krishna, Lord Jagannath, is for everyone. What he did as a little boy, he said, I'm doing the same thing now as the founder Acharya of ISKCON, doing Ratha Yatra festivals. A chance when everyone can come together and be fascinated by the parade of Lord Jagannath. People may not know what they're seeing. They may know what they're seeing, but they're all benefited so extraordinarily. Of course, we need to be careful about thinking that automatically by seeing Lord Jagannath, people are liberated and that's the end of that. No, that's just the beginning. Just like initiation is just the beginning of knowledge and the formal application of that knowledge. So the question was brought up to Srila Prabhupada that some Shastras say that anyone who watches the Rath cart go by is immediately liberated. What do we make of that? And Srila Prabhupada replied, yes, it is so, but what do they do after the Rath cart passes? In other words, they have that opportunity to be free from their sinful life, but if they restart it again, once the Rath cart goes by, then they do retain the benefit, of course, of having seen Lord Jagannath, but they need devotees to consolidate their spiritual life and bring them forward. So speaking about devotees, how can we avoid not speaking about Maharaj Prataparudra? I spoke about him a bit during the Brooklyn Temple virtual Ratha Yatra, and I'll speak a bit more today. You know about the king's desire to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I won't emphasize what I spoke about previous weekend for the Brooklyn virtual Ratha Yatra. I want to focus on certainty. The certainty that you'll never see Mahaprabhu in Puri if you bring up the subject that the king should see him. Now, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, as you know, had warned King Prataparudra upon the king's first presentation that I'd like the darshan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I hear he's extremely merciful. Can you arrange something? Why did you allow him to leave Puri? I've explained all that previously. Still, although Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya presented to the king that the odds of your getting a darshan are practically zero, because Mahaprabhu doesn't see kings even in dreams, what to speak of in the flesh. Still, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya brought up the point. And what was Mahaprabhu's response? If you continue to speak like this about my meeting the king, you will never see me here again. This is very intense. Never see me here again. Therefore, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, never let these words emerge from your mouth again. What can be said? What did Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya do? He went home and began to ponder the whole situation. What to do? Never again will we see Mahaprabhu in Puri if I bring this subject up. But then contrast that with Mahaprabhu's discussion with Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy presented that when I approached the king to retire, I went over this the previous weekend, I approached the king to announce my retirement so I could serve your lotus feet, Mahaprabhu. The king granted me a full pension, granted me all facility. And you know Ramananda Roy's conclusion. This king has such extraordinary qualities. I don't even have a pinch of his devotion. What was Mahaprabhu's response? Because the king has shown you so much love, Lord Krishna will certainly accept him. So on the one hand, you have, don't bring this subject up, you'll never see me again. On the other hand, you have, certainly Lord Krishna will bestow his mercy upon him. Because the king has shown so much love for you, the devotee, certainly. So on the one hand, we have never, impossible. On the other hand, we have certainly. So what's making the difference here? It is the combination of Guru Krishna Prasad, the unbeatable combination, the most inconceivable combination in the universe. Let's meditate on that. And we're going to carry on with this theme throughout our discussion today. Never again, impossible, no way, and certainly. So after Ramananda Roy made his presentation, Lord Chaitanya asked him what we thought would be a routine inquiry. By the way, I'm sure you visited Kamalanayan, the lotus-eyed Lord Jagannath, as everyone does first when they arrive in Puri. No? What is this? Why not see Lord Jagannath first and then come here? What was Ramananda Roy's response? A very important answer in terms of understanding ecstatic love. He pointed out to Mahaprabhu, what can I do? In so many words, he's saying, I'm powerless. The legs are like a chariot. The heart is like a chariot driver. Where the heart goes, the legs must follow. The living entity goes where the heart is. In this way, Ramananda Roy is pointing out the nature of ecstatic love for Krishna, spontaneous love for Krishna. When you're in its grip, what can you do? The love of Ramananda Roy for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could not be constrained by any other formalities or even transcendental considerations. His love was shaped in such a way that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, my heart is running towards him. So Ramananda Roy, in his first going to see Mahaprabhu, is very important. He further explained, my mind has brought me here. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madjaji mam namaskru. Always think of me, become my devotee. Ramananda Roy is demonstrating my mind is spontaneously absorbed in attraction for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, I know Lord Jagannath is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but here we also have the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a devotee. You see, sometimes Mahaprabhu would demonstrate that he's a Supreme Personality of Godhead, and sometimes he would demonstrate that he's a devotee. As you may have often heard me explain, both Mahaprabhu and Krishna are Swayam Bhagavan. Is that surprising? You may be accustomed to thinking that Mahaprabhu is the golden avatar, yes, the incarnation of Krishna, the incarnation of love of God. Yes, loosely speaking, that is so. But the actuality, the tattva, is that Mahaprabhu is Swayam Bhagavan, just as Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. And the mystery is that when Krishna wants to relish love and separation, he appears as Mahaprabhu. And when Mahaprabhu wants to relish being the supreme enjoyer, he appears as Krishna. This is the confidential tattva. And they both have their domains at the topmost portion of Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrinda. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that in their perfected state, some devotees are fully focused on Krishna Lila. Other devotees are fully focused on Gaura Lila, and some devotees are fully focused on both. So let us always remember that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radha Krishna combined. More precisely, he has the two-handed form of Krishna and the heart, the emotions of Srimati Radharani. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. Lord Chaitanya is Radha Krishna combined. So here Ramananda Roy is demonstrating my mind is spontaneously attracted in this way. So therefore I first came to see you. He said, I couldn't even consider first going to Lord Jagannath's temple. I couldn't even consider it. That may sound astonishing to some of you, but this is the nature of spontaneous love. As Ramananda Roy said, where the heart goes, the legs must follow. The legs are the chariot, the heart is the chariot driver. What can I do? I'm helplessly in the grip of ecstatic, spontaneous love. All right, so what was Mahaprabhu's response? He said, immediately go to Lord Jagannath's temple. He's taking the role of the devotee. I'm a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why haven't you gone first to see the Supreme Lord? Why? Immediately go. So Ramananda Roy hastily departed. In other words, there's the order. He immediately executed. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami comments in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that who can comprehend this prema bhakti, this ecstatic love? Now, I have to confess that for many years, I overlooked this point. My acquaintance with Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita began in 1975. Actually, 74, when the first volume came out of Adi Leela, but especially in 75, when I joined the BBT during the famous Prabhupada Chaitanya Charitamrita Marathon, in which he demanded 17 books in 2 months. So my service, for the most part, besides being the copy editor on 5th canto, my service was Chaitanya Charitamrita. I had to read it 12 hours a day and make sure there were no mistakes in it. Couldn't fall asleep. We were on a marathon. So morning till night, my service was to read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, find spelling mistakes, missing words, punctuation mistakes, all the kinds of errors that creep in during the book production process. I've read Chaitanya Charitamrita countless times, up until this day, of course. But this morning, it struck me. Because we may take Kaviraj Goswami's statements to be poetic or just enthusiasm. But now I understand this statement is monumental. Who can understand? Who can comprehend the prema bhakti that Ramananda Roy is demonstrating by first going to see Mahaprabhu? And then when he gets the order to go see Lord Jagannath, he immediately executes. What's going on here? This theme we should keep in mind throughout hearing Gaura Leela. You're dealing with ecstatic love of Krishna. Sometimes devotees ask about things Srila Prabhupada did, things Srila Prabhupada said. I always respond that one thing you always must take into account is that you're dealing with an ecstatic lover of Krishna. And Chaitanya Charitamrita makes the point throughout it that it's not always possible to understand a devotee in ecstatic love of Krishna. Yes, much of it we can understand. The words, the behavior, but there's always going to be something that just defies categorization because you're dealing with persons who are not on the material plane. They're absorbed in ecstatic love. And so those who are not so absorbed can't completely calculate what's going on. So I could see that with my perception of what Kaviraj Goswami is saying. Who can comprehend? Who can understand this? Ramananda Roy's interaction with Mahaprabhu at this point. I thought it was just routine previously, All right, as they say in the USA, what's the big deal? He didn't go see Jagannath first. He came to see Mahaprabhu. Okay, let's move on. Let's get to some nectar here. Let's get to some interesting stories or interesting leelas. But Kaviraj Goswami is pointing out, this is an ecstatic leela. And so I started thinking, what is this showing us? It's showing us Ramananda Roy, who's an intimate associate of Mahaprabhu. It's showing us the depths of his ecstatic love in action. So I began to meditate on this increasingly. So then we go back to Prataparuja Maharaj. He presents himself to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in a desperate way. If I don't get the mercy, at least a darshan of Mahaprabhu, I will not be able to maintain my life. And I won't be king anymore. I'll give up my throne. This is a very extreme situation. And what was Bhattacharya's response? Again, certainty. On the one hand, you have the certainty that Mahaprabhu will never even hear the request. On the other hand, you have the certainty expressed by the devotee. You're going to get the mercy. And that was exactly Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's response. I am sure you will get Lord Chaitanya's mercy because of your Devamrita. You're so determined. In other words, the king impressed solidly the devotee, who was his guru, that this is what I want, and I am prepared to do whatever it takes to get it. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied in that way. Kaviraj Goswami explains, because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya knows the Lord is under the control of ecstatic love, pure love. Let's think about that for a while. The power of pure love is so important in bhakti. This is what we're striving for. This is what we're dedicating our life for. Our income may rise, our income may fall. Our house may get bigger, our house may get smaller. Our children may stay at home, they may leave home. Your children may give you 20 grandchildren, they may give you none. But we are determined to advance in bhakti, going up through the stages that Rupa Goswami enunciates. We want to reach bhava, the preliminary stage of love of Krishna. We relish hearing about those advanced stages. And we don't think, what's the use in hearing about them because it's impossible? No, by hearing about them, because they're there in the Shastra, our aspirations increase. So consciously or unconsciously, something takes hold in our heart. I would like to attain this. So we shouldn't underestimate the hearing process. What's the use in hearing about these stages of ecstatic love? What's the point? Look where I'm at. I'm immersed in economic affairs, family affairs. And when devotees speak about ecstatic love for Krishna, what goes on in Chaitanya Charitamrita? Well, I don't say it, but I wonder, hey, what about us in the real world? But what you're hearing in Chaitanya Charitamrita is the real world. But with mundane senses, we can't understand it. But gradually, as we engage in devotional service, something starts to dawn in us, and appetite starts to grow. But to understand the behavior of devotees in ecstatic love is difficult, as said so many times in the Shastra. And it's impossible for those situated on the mundane platform. I wanted to understand what life was like during the time of Mahaprabhu. Not from the viewpoint of devotees, but I wanted to hear what mundane historians had to say. How did they view this phenomenon? Because Mahaprabhu's presence is historically acknowledged. So I checked out some British historians. They were the imperial lords of India for hundreds of years. So I wondered, after the Muslim rule receded, what did the British have to say about it? And indeed, one prominent British scholar said, this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the greatest thing ever for India's sociology. He smashed the caste system. He demonstrated egalitarianism. He did wonderful welfare work. But then came the Puri stage, and he lost the plot completely. He became mad. What a great loss to the world. He started out so nicely. Civil disobedience, violating the caste system, and then he went mad at the last 12 years or so of his life. What else could you expect mundane historians to say? They can't even understand you're not the body. You want them to understand ecstatic love for Krishna and the symptoms of separation? So when King Prataparudra expressed his determination, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya thought about it very deeply, because the ways of Vaishnavas are very monumental. They require deep consideration. I wonder if you've ever had some interaction with a devotee that caused you to really contemplate, ponder, reflect. You might think that's a waste of time, but because devotees are so special, they require special thought and consideration. Why did this Prabhu or Mataji say this? And why did I respond in that way? I wonder if that's appropriate. I wonder if I'm really seeing the situation deeply, or did I respond inappropriately? Or, although I responded appropriately, how might I better respond so as to deepen this relationship and benefit more from it? So therefore, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, in dealing with Prataparudra, was always very thoughtful. And when you remember when Mahaprabhu said, don't ever let those words emerge from your mouth again, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, never mention again that the king and I should meet. Otherwise, I'm gone. I'm out of here. You'll never see me again. Those words, as we said, made Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya go home and think about it. What do I do with this situation? And now the Bhattacharya is witnessing the king's Dridhavrata, his determination. So again, he becomes very thoughtful. What are we going to do about this? Actually, he was astonished. So what we need to bear in mind, and Prabhupada gives us help in the purport, what we need to bear in mind is that ahoy tukiya pratiyata, there are no material impediments to bhakti. Somehow or other, pure bhakti goes on. And in this instance, the point is that whether you are a poor person or a king, you can render pure devotional service. So not just one side. We often speak about that other side. No matter how poor you are, you can render pure devotion to Krishna somehow or other, some way. But the other side is also true. No matter how rich you are, no matter how successful you are, you can still render pure devotional service. So the point is, regardless of your social status, economic situation, pure bhakti can be yours. So in this case, we're hearing about that point in relation to a king, someone who Mahaprabhu said, you're presenting to me a live snake. That's what I think of kings. And just like you should be afraid of a live snake, similarly, you should be afraid of anyone who has that title king. Still, though, the pure bhakti can flow. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti atokshite. Ahoitukiya pratiyata. What causes interruptions in our service? What's the cause, the hetu of the interruptions? It's material desire. As long as we have material desire, our service can't flow without impediment, without interruption. The interruption itself is actually caused by the material desire. Oh, what about me? I wish I had this. Oh, I want that. And oh, yes, what about Krishna? So we all have to make advancement from that level of interruption. And how we can do that, regardless of our material situation, is by taking advantage of association that will inspire us to deepen our dedication to devotional service. And we're going to speak more about Prataparudra Maharaj's seva dedication, because this is what Mahaprabhu is watching. In spite of Mahaprabhu's declaration, no way, never, ever, certainly not. What would you do if someone gave you such a unilateral response? You'll never get this job. I'll never marry you. Remember Rukmini's letter to Krishna in Krishna Lila? If I don't attain your hand in this life, I'm prepared to execute austerities for hundreds of births until I attain you. I often point out, I wonder how many of you in your marriages heard such a presentation. So the acharyas want to impart to us the confidence that devotional service is the most exalted opportunity which can be executed by anyone in any position. Srila Prabhupada, in his travels around the world, stimulated bhakti everywhere. And demonstrated by his own example that no matter what the situation, whether in quarantine, in ill health, even on the departure bed, pure bhakti can go on. And this example is so important to us. So hearing of hearing of King Prataparuja's determination and thinking about it, a Vaishnava is thoughtful. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, "My dear king, don't worry." Same thing that Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita. Ma sucha, don't fear, don't worry, don't be in anxiety. You just take my program, toss out your program, and I'll protect you from all your karmic reactions. Don't worry. Most likely, most of you have not been to Australia, but there's a common expression there. When someone asks, can such and such be done? Or can you do such and such? Maybe in the USA, you say, oh, of course, I'm good. It'll be done. In Australia, they simply say, no worries, mate. Now, Krishna is the original person for saying no worries. And he does that at the end of Bhagavad Gita, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, as the guru of Prataparuja Maharaj, is telling him, do not worry. Why? Why shouldn't Prataparuja worry? Because of your Dridhavrata, your firm determination. Because of that, I am sure Mahaprabhu will bestow his mercy on you. I'm sure it's going to happen. Wait a minute. Remember Mahaprabhu saying, no way, never, in no circumstances will this ever happen? Just let the words emerge from your mouth again, saying those things, and I'm gone. So we've got all this certainty. And remember, when Ramananda Roy made his presentation about the king, concluding that I don't have even a speck of devotion that Prataparuja has, Mahaprabhu's response was, because of your love for the king and his service to you, certainly Lord Krishna will bestow his mercy on him. So this is what makes this Ratha Yatra Leela so fascinating. Inconceivable opposing certainties going around on all sides. And the dynamic is the combined mercy of Guru and Krishna. The king's attitude in service caused Bhattacharya to say, your love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very deep. Therefore, the result will certainly be there. But how? Now, this is before, at least according to the chronology that Kaviraj Goswami presents, this is before further appeals were made to Mahaprabhu, even by Nityananda himself. We always hear that more merciful than even Mahaprabhu is Nityananda, but Nityananda's excuse, or not excuse, his presentation to Mahaprabhu mostly went in vain. Although Mahaprabhu accepted Nityananda's request that at least give the king one of your garments, your old garments. Remember, I spoke about this last weekend, so I'll just briefly go over it. The devotees had gathered. What to do about the king? He's going to give up his throne and become a beggar. How are we going to try to float this issue to Mahaprabhu. How are we going to broach it to him? They made a plan. We will not ask Mahaprabhu directly to meet the king. We will just go before him and recite the king's good qualities. And then we'll see what happens after that. Very ingenious plan. Except that when they actually entered Mahaprabhu's presence, they were speechless. And so Mahaprabhu urged them, you have something to say? Please say it. And then Nityananda Prabhu, the Avadut, the unpredictable, he discarded the plan and just said, look, here's the fact. Unless the king has your darshan, he's going to do something very radical. He's going to give up the throne. But according to the chronology of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, even before that, even before partial concessions by Mahaprabhu, giving a garment, meeting the king's son, even before that, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had made a strategy for Ratha Yatra. How, when Mahaprabhu is resting from dancing in ecstasy, he'll then enter the garden, Gundicha garden, and there you should go massage him and read the 5 chapters from Bhagavatam about Rasa Leela. In this way, you'll be able to catch his lotus feet. Now, mind you, don't go in your royal dress. Put on Vaishnava attire. This is important for us in many ways. Sometimes devotees use this incident to say that you can change your attire in whatever way is necessary for Krishna's service. But we're not going to touch upon that point, that preaching tactic point right now. What came to my mind this morning by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada in his purports was that just see how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is pushing on his devotee care program. He's so ready to help Prataparudra. Not because that's the king, but because here is such a qualified devotee with such determination to see Mahaprabhu. Because the king was always thinking of Mahaprabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wanted to help him, showing his compassionate devotee care. How can I assist this devotee in achieving his ambitions, his spiritual ambitions? I've noted his determination. Not, let me ignore that, he can fend for himself. Or, if he gets the mercy, there'll be less for me. I'll get less attention. It's amazing how these mundane considerations, tinges of them, can influence us based on material consciousness. This reminds me of when I first started reading Prabhupada's books. I explained some weeks ago how I wasn't associating with any devotees purposefully. And I would read the books on my own 4 hours a day, month after month after month. So I was reading about the spiritual world. And I was definitely touched and starting to feel motivated. But I thought, this place sounds so fantastic, the spiritual world. I'd better hurry up and go there before it gets overcrowded. I was making a mundane calculation that it's going to be like Manhattan. That's where I lived, 90th and Central Park West. Uh, did, can you hear this? Chintamani Prakarasadamasu Kalpa Vriksha Lakshavrateshu. Everyone would want to go there. I've got to make a plan. The place is going to pack out soon. It's going to be overcrowded. Such is the way of mundane rationalization, mundane empiricism. Sometimes we think if I help another devotee advance, he'll become more noted. I'll be in the shade, in the shadow, and he or she will be in the bright light. No, who knows? This devotee I'm helping may surpass me. Therefore, I'll be very guarded in my measures. This is being diplomatic. These are political considerations, material considerations. The heart of a Vaishnav just gushes. By your becoming more advanced, if I can assist you, Krishna will be merciful upon me. And if that devotee apparently does much better service, or even apparently a little better service than what we are doing, we thank that devotee. You have done so wonderfully. I'd like to also do the same. So as Chaitanya Charitamrita explains, and you'll see it later in the Ratha Yatra Leela, when Prataparudra Maharaj does approach Mahaprabhu in the garden, where Mahaprabhu is resting in ecstasy, his body covered with transcendental perspiration, what does Prataparudra do? This is very crucial what he does first. He first offers obeisances to the devotees. By your mercy, I can approach Mahaprabhu. And then he begins to massage Mahaprabhu while reciting the Rasa Leela chapters. When he finishes, the conclusion we've discussed before, how Mahaprabhu embraced him. Burida, Burida, you are the most magnificent. You are the most magnificent. I have nothing to give you but embraces. You have given me the greatest treasure. When the devotees witnessed this extraordinary conclusion, they weren't thinking like maybe I would think, oh, this devotee got the mercy. I didn't get it. No. As Kaviraj Goswami points out, their minds were, I always remember this, open and blissful. You see, when there's jealousy, when there's envy, your mind closes down. It's very unenlivening. Why is that devotee getting all the attention? What about me? You can just feel your mind closing down. And it's a very miserly, kripana attitude. But Chaitanya Leela can teach us so much. Just studying the reactions and interactions among Mahaprabhu's devotees. Their minds became open and blissful. Oh, we're so happy for you. The storehouse of love of Krishna is increasing all the time. We want to experience that reality about how the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan are always expanding the limits of the ocean of transcendental bliss. It's not stable or what to speak of stagnant. It's dynamic, always increasing. We want to be in touch with that through our service, that ever increasing bhakti shakti. I often tell the story of seeing Prabhupada in Atlanta, February of 75. And the devotees were staging a play for him, Chaitanya Leela, the famous Chandkazi incident. And during this Leela, as you remember, the Hindus, the official Hindus who are protesting against Mahaprabhu, they think they're making very powerful points to the Chandkazi. And they presented a list of accusations. He's spoiling the Hindu religion. He's having low-class people chant mantras. And then they presented what they thought was the most powerful point. He's getting everyone to chant Hare Krishna. And by his doing that, the potency of the Hare Krishna mantra will decrease. And Prabhupada broke into the drama. He broke into the theater. He was seated on his Vyasasan. He spoke into the microphone. As soon as he heard potency of the Hare Krishna mantra will decrease, he said, potency has already increased. All the devotees were overwhelmed with ecstasy. Jai Prabhupada. This is the reality that the genuine devotee of the Lord perceives. It's not theory. It's not theology. It's not doctrine. Bhakti is the most exquisite non-material experience. So back to the point about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya encouraging King Prataparuja, wanting to help him. This is the devotee care program. If this devotee becomes more advanced than me, so be it. I'll get some credit from Krishna for helping him or her. I remember one letter Srila Prabhupada wrote describing how he perceived his relationship with his disciples. He said, I see you all as little spiritual masters that my Guru Maharaj has sent to me to train up. Oh, how I pray to maintain a drop of that attitude. Now, interestingly, even before Nityananda's presentation, the several other presentations about the king made to Mahaprabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had predicted when he gave the king that strategy to connect with Mahaprabhu in the garden when he's fatigued from Ratha Yatra dancing. Even before further incidents, when Mahaprabhu said, no, I'm not meeting the king, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had detected the Lord has already changed his mind due to Ramananda Roy's description of your pure love for him. So further back, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was convinced it's going to happen. But still, the Vaishnavas proceeded with their various intrigues and plans how Mahaprabhu would meet the king. But even before that, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was convinced. Ramananda Roy's talks about you, about your good qualities, that was actually enough. Now, actually, the king had the mercy of both Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was so impressed by the king's determination, and the mercy of Ramananda Roy, whom Prataparuja Maharaj had served so wondrously, giving him retirement with full pension. And remember, in reporting to Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy said, when I just mentioned your name to the king, he broke out in ecstasy. This is the kind of king we have. So based on all this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya predicted the Lord has already changed his mind. So upon the Bhattacharya's giving that strategy to the king, what happened then? At that point, the king firmly decided, this is the strategy I'm going to pursue. This is how I'm going to execute. I'm going to follow those instructions. With that state of mind, he felt transcendental happiness. I've made up my mind. I'm following the instruction of the Guru, who is representing Krishna. And therefore, there's an experience that results from that. He felt non-material happiness. Everyone wants to be happy. But here we see the path to genuine happiness as indirect enjoyers. Our problem is that we want to be direct enjoyers, and that is constitutionally impossible. We can only enjoy through Krishna's enjoyment. How many lifetimes will it take for us to act on this reality? It seems so contradictory, doesn't it? If I want to be happy, shouldn't I try for my own happiness? Who else is going to get it for me? Or if we're a little more charitable, we say, I want to strive for the happiness of my family. But the bhakti process is about making the whole world our family by seeing them as part and parcel of Krishna. Because Krishna, as he says in Bhagavad Gita, is the seed-giving father of all living entities. And certainly in relation to Lord Jagannath, we see him as the Lord of the universe, the father of all living entities. And Ratha Yatra is a wonderful time for understanding what is real unity, what is real togetherness. So let us reflect on these points: how to care for devotees, how to be inclusive, how the scope of Lord Jagannath's mercy can envelop everyone, no matter what part of the world they live, no matter what kind of body they have. This was Prabhupada's protest to the overseers of the Jagannath temple. He said, do you have Jagannath, Lord of the universe? Or do you have some limited local god? What's going on here? If he's Lord of the universe, he should demonstrate his fatherhood of all living entities. Why are you not allowing everyone into the temple? So those of us who have the wonderful fortune of receiving the gift of bhakti should always think how to expand the family, how to transcend any perceived social barriers that the world is so quick to erect. There is no material impediment that Jagannath's mercy cannot flood over. So those are my thoughts with you all today. I thank you for your kind attention. Hare Krishna.